All right. I see Heather, Vanessa, Amanda. Hello. I'm so excited to see you, our all-female panel, I might add. Thank you so much to the three of you for joining us for our session. So everyone, I'd like to quickly do some intros here. Please welcome Amanda Bertucci, who's a pre-sales team leader in EMEA for ArcServe. Thank you. I know it's late over there for you, Amanda. Sure appreciate you joining. Heather Blackwell, Senior Manager of Solution Consulting at Hootsuite, and Vanessa Martin, Solutions Engineering Leader for the West at Slack. Today's session, we're going to be doing a panel around a really important topic, talking about finding mentors and sponsors, as well as how to best utilize them specifically to fuel your career growth. This topic's come up quite a few times already today. So I think that knowing the content that our three panelists have prepared, I think is just going to really tie all of this up very, very well from what we've been discussing so far. So we have three main topics. I know that the three panelists have a lot to share, so we're going to try to manage our time as best as we can, but we're going to have two panelists speak on each one of these discussion points. So the first one is going to be around why have a mentor and talk about some of the different success stories around that. We're also going to speak to some key best practices and, how do you get the most out of it? Everybody knows you should have this type of mentor sponsor in your life, but how do you take full advantage of that? And then the topic I'm really excited about is, now for those of you that are in the leadership role, you might suddenly find yourself that you are in the mentor seat for the first time. So what do you do with that? So let's stop sharing our screen so we can bring our speakers front and center. There they are. Love it. Everyone, thank you so much again for being here. The first one that we're going to cover is the idea of having a mentor and some of those success stories. So Amanda, if we can start with you, I'd love it if you could just kind of, from a contextual perspective, let's start with how we're defining these terms in this session.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. Well, it's really important to understand what is expected in a mentor-mentee relationship, right? And there's a lot of mix-up of concepts there when we talk about this relationship, because a lot of people think that a mentor is like a coach, but they're very, very different things. It's very important to understand that difference. A mentor will influence the personal and the professional development of the mentee over time, right? With a coach, you usually have an objective that is set for the present or for the near future. You're going to work your skills to achieve that. But when that's done, that relationship stays there unless you have another task that you want to pursue with that particular coach. But with a mentor, it's a long-term relationship in which you build a trust. And that's the person that you go to when you have questions, when you feel insecure, when you have a difficult situation. In the previous session, they were talking about how hard it is to give feedback, right? So I used my mentors a lot for that kind of thing, how to give feedback and how to deal with different people, right? So the mentor is that person that you feel comfortable with, that you can feel vulnerable with, and that you can open up to the thing about the things that are going to be part of your knowledge and your growth, right? So yeah.
That's such a good point. It is really difficult to give, and sometimes it's hard to receive that feedback. So having kind of that trusted advisor, if you will, to give you the, sometimes that tough love, if you will. I think that's a great way to look at this. Now, Heather, I want to pivot a little bit on the same topic, but a little bit different here. Talk about finding that mentor and where you might look for them.
Yeah, it's such a great question, Kelly. And, to Amanda's point, right, this is somebody that you really want to have that trusted relationship with. And, the good news is oftentimes you don't actually have to look very far. Generally, these people can be right under your nose, whether it's somebody inside your company or whether it's somebody outside of your company. I've been really fortunate that I've had a handful of mentors, again, right under my nose, inside my company and outside my company. And one individual that's been particularly crucial in my leadership journey and my career development overall has actually been my director. This is somebody who, I've worked with for upwards of, I think, almost 5 years now. And he knows me. He knows exactly what my career aspirations are. He knows what my strengths and weaknesses are. And he is somebody in a position to help provide opportunities that can help flex that muscle and that leadership muscle. Whether, you're a individual contributor working towards a leadership role or even early in your leadership career. I think the other really important thing about this relationship that you have with this person is, it's not easy. It's not an easy journey to move into leadership. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be hurdles along the way. And you want this person to, have faith that you'll work through it, but also be able to push you outside of your comfort zone, right? When they provide these opportunities, that environment that's safe to fail and that, you can kind of stretch your comfort zone a little bit to learn something new and, again, to build on those skills.
I love it, Heather. As you kind of explained here, your mentor could be right under your nose, or you might want to think about looking for them in a few different areas. So, James, if you can, I'd like to have a poll launched up. Look at you. You're so good. You're already there. So before we go over to a topic I'm really excited about that Vanessa is going to speak to us about, when we were doing our prep sessions, we thought this would be a really good opportunity to get some live feedback from the audience. So do you have a mentor today, especially after you just heard Amanda's definition for today's context? And if you do, are they internal? Are they external? Does it not really apply? And that's going to help us to lead into our next topic here. So let's see what we've got. So it's almost 50-50 on if you have a mentor or not. I don't know about you ladies. I'm a little surprised by that. What are your quick thoughts on this before we jump over to Vanessa?
It is surprising, yes, because mentors are such an important part of that journey, right, towards management. I mean, that relationship doesn't have to start only when you get into a management position, but your mentor can actually help you move within your career. What do you think, Heather and Vanessa?
I completely agree. I'm surprised. And, I think we talk about this mentorship-mentee relationship in the context of going into leadership, but it's also heavily important as individual contributors as well. So if you don't have a mentor, I encourage you to go out and find one.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this more later, but it doesn't have to be such a formal process either. So when we're talking about mentors, even though Amanda gave that great definition, it could be really anyone, especially earlier on in your career, that you look to for guidance. But speaking of it being just anyone, Vanessa, I'd like to have you chat a little bit about some best practices. What do you think about having just that one mentor?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So I think, I'm also surprised by those stats, and I wonder if maybe we shouldn't expand the definition of mentor a little bit. So,
and personally, hang on, Vanessa, I'm so sorry. Hang on, I'm seeing that people aren't seeing the results, which I want people to see those. James, can we share? Okay.
Oh, there they are.
Steve, thank you for bringing it up. I'm so sorry. I thought people were seeing it. This is important. I didn't want to interrupt you, Vanessa, but I want folks to see what we're talking about here. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries at all, Kelly. So I see, 53% saying they don't have a mentor. And I think that this is worth talking about for a second. So I recently read Julie Joe's book. I think it was called The Making of a Manager, What to Do When Everyone Looks to You. And I would highly recommend that book, especially for those of us that are women in tech, but it's relevant for everybody. I'm pretty sure I stole this idea from her, but her approach was don't stop at one mentor, have a board. Building out a board is essential to your success in a variety of ways. So when we think about that mentor relationship, can one person give you everything you need as far as guidance, advice, emotional support, strategic support? are they able to make that commitment to you? Could you call them up on the phone right then? And so you're lucky if you can do that with one person. But ultimately, I think in sort of, where we're at today, like we should consider expanding that out and having people that meet different needs or different criteria for you. So one example I was just thinking of, I'm new, been a manager at Slack for about a year now. And if I have any sort of, feedback, I think just like we talked about in the previous session, I bring that to someone who probably wouldn't consider themselves my mentor necessarily. I never formally asked, but this is my empathy department. And I just double check and make sure, okay, is this exactly what I want to say? Is it coming across right in Slack? Because of course we're slacking these things. So I would just encourage you to think about that too. What are your different areas that you want advice in? Culture, just selling your ideas or being more effective, being a parent and a boss at the same time. I've got different people for these. I also think that it's worthwhile to consider getting perspectives outside of your organization. It's free therapy sometimes to just distill the essence of a challenge or problem you're facing and have someone from the outside understand that. Sometimes you solve your own problems with that. And then the final point I'll make, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, if you're just getting one point of view on things, that's probably a disservice to you and to your team. So think for a moment about the people on your board, and are you getting a diverse set of perspectives? That's going to be really valuable to you and to your team and your success.
Absolutely, Vanessa. I think that's spot on. And I want to kind of keep this conversation going. So, Amanda, when we were talking through some of these topics, you had some good examples of how you diversify that mentor board, if you will. Can you give us some of those examples? Because again, I think when we use the word mentor, it's easy to think of it in this very rigid, very specific, very formal approach. And I want us to kind of break that notion now. So talk a little bit about the diversification of your board, if you will.
Yeah, I think that it's normally when we think about the mentor, if we see our manager as somebody that we trust, that we can open up with, they can become our mentors, right? In fact, my boss is one of my mentors. He's a person I can trust and that I can open up with. But he has an experience that is similar to mine. We come from the same industry and we have the same perspective most of the time. So I like really to diversify. And one of my other mentors is a woman that leads another team in the company, a different department, but she has a completely different experience. I can relate to her by being a woman as well. She understands my struggles as being a woman and a leader. So that's really important. And, you don't have to just keep that inside of your company. Like Vanessa was mentioning before, your mentor could be, I don't know, a professor you had, or a friend, or somebody else in the industry that inspires you. And again, like she said, you don't have to come up with the questions. The person that actually the people that are my mentors today, I never came up to them and asked, "Do you want to be my mentor?" It just happened. I went to them, asking for questions, asking for their opinions, what they would do in a particular situation. And that kind of became a habit, and they became my mentors, right? So today we have this relationship that, again, is built over time, right? So I think that trust is a very important word there. And I think that the diversity, not just in terms of gender or other things, but, having different perspectives from different departments, maybe different industries or different places, that really helps.
And great points, Amanda, because as Heather mentioned earlier, it could be someone, right under your nose, like a boss, but I'm scanning through some of the Slack comments now, and Paul McGarry brought up a good point that, leadership sponsors aren't always mentors, but specifically, it's a challenge to find one capable if you're in the expert track. I think that's a really good point, because the higher up you go, it might be a little bit more difficult to find those quote unquote mentors or those sponsors. So it's definitely a good idea to start thinking outside of the box, and where else you can again diversify that board, if you will. The next topic is one I think can resonate with a lot of people. So James just launched another poll for us. And since the premise of this particular conference today is around folks that have recently moved into the leadership role, as well as folks that are thinking about moving into the leadership role, when we were talking about these topics, this was one that really resonated with me. I feel like for so long in my career, I was, actively seeking out that female executive or my boss, or thinking about different ways to find these people that I can look up to and learn from. And it is still kind of a crazy thing to think, wait a minute, people are coming to me now? Really? Sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, aren't I still 25? I thought, no, maybe not. Those gray hairs tell me otherwise. So let's take a look at the poll. Hopefully everyone's been able to see it here. James, you were so on it. So look at this. So 58% are already mentoring folks. So I think I could get some advice from the audience here, which is great. And the second question is, if you are mentoring someone, are you an individual contributor or are you already in a leadership role? Wow, there's quite a few folks that are already mentors that are in the individual contributor role. I love this. And I think a great point, we're going to talk more about this, is you don't have to have that title to be a leader. Exactly what you're doing here by mentoring folks, even if you don't have that title, you already are a leader. I love that. So let's talk about this a little bit further. So what I want to do next is, Heather, if I can come back over to you, now that we're thinking about ourselves in that mentor type role, can you talk a little bit more about how being a mentor has helped you on your journey?
Yeah, I think it's such a fantastic opportunity for individual contributors looking to move into that leadership role and that next phase of really building that leadership muscle. There are so many opportunities, I think, to find those individuals looking for support, whether you're a specialist in a particular topic and you're educating others and mentoring them through building that expertise, whether there are new hires being onboarded in your organization and they need somebody to show them the ropes. It's an opportunity for you to, put up your hand and step up and again, work on those leadership muscles while supporting others that this may not be in your job description. So I couldn't encourage it more. And I've had the opportunity myself as well, prior to moving into a formal leadership role, to take on some mentorship opportunities, again, both inside my company and outside of the company with, colleagues or friends who are looking, even like, I think of the example, but like family, like I have a sibling who's quite a lot younger and, needed some mentorship and was developing a sales career at the time as well. And was a great opportunity to just build a little bit more of that muscle. So yeah, like I said, I couldn't encourage it more. And, I think there's a few basics really to start with. I think one of the topics we've, brought up a lot is trust in that as an important piece in that mentor-mentee relationship. And where to start is just really get to know that person, get to know, again, their strengths, their weaknesses, get to know what their career aspirations are, talk about that kind of future state and that immediate state. We've heard it in some of the sessions before, about thinking long-term kind of career goals versus, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do tomorrow? So just get to know them a little bit better and their goals and share your stories. And those are really awesome places to start, just to build that relationship. And again, flex that leadership muscle in an informal capacity.
Now, Heather, were you an individual contributor on your team before you moved into this role?
I was, yeah. I was a solutions consultant for about 3 years before moving into the management role.
And so for like the folks that might have onboarded after you, did you play that mentor role for them?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is where my leader was really supportive. He knew my aspirations to move into leadership, and he knew I was looking for opportunities to build that skill. So when we had new hires join the company, we would usually set them up with a buddy or a mentor. And I was able to put my hand up and step into that position in a few scenarios. And yeah, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. And I'd imagine that, to kind of take it one step further, when the time came for you to move into that leadership role, I bet you, whether you realized it or not, that those colleagues were already looking at you in that leader capacity. So I think that's a great step to put, your leadership practice into play now. Thank you, Heather. And Vanessa, I want to have you talk a little bit more on this topic. Like, we've had mentors throughout our lives. How do you kind of pay it forward? What do you think about now that you are that mentor? How does it work for you?
Yeah, Kelly, I could answer that a couple different ways. So I think, just tying back into what Heather said for a moment, if you have an opportunity informally or formally to mentor somebody that's coming on to the team, that is such a great way to sort of like flex that leadership muscle. And it will prepare you for your upcoming role in leadership. So I couldn't agree more. I've had folks on my team raise their hands and say, as soon as we start hiring, can I be the next mentor? And I would just encourage folks to do that if you haven't done that yet. I think just kind of turning things around for a second and looking at the equation from the other side, when people start asking you to mentor, it's a great opportunity for reflection. Like, how am I showing up? What strengths am I conveying that someone notices? And then, I would say by rule of elimination, what am I not showing up as, right? So there's definitely a moment to ask yourself a question: is what am I giving and what am I getting? In the relationship. I just think that's a super valuable way to also strengthen your own mentor relationships. As you're like, getting folks coming to you for the first time, you're like, oh, okay, wait, our relationship dynamic is like this. I could probably, get a little bit more out of my own relationship with my mentor. One thing that I think is just speaking personally, I've been in tech for 20 years. Mostly I've been the only woman around. Things have changed a lot and dramatically since I've been in pre-sales over the last several years. But I remember when I first took mat leave in my company years ago, nobody in our team had done that. Like, it was like, wait, what? And so, full circle now, maybe 10 years later, someone on my team is leaving for mat leave next week. And we've just had our discussions about, one, you got this. Two, it's going to be weird when you get back. Like, I'm here to support you through this. And I just love being able to pay that forward for people. So I look at our panel here of all women, right? Like, this is, it's a great thing. So anyhow, I just would say, and I want to encourage everybody to have those informal mentorship roles first. And then, you'll have more and more people coming to you over time. And suddenly that it makes you realize, like, okay, wait, I actually do have something to offer. It helps me with imposter syndrome personally. It's like, I guess I have been around for like 20 years. Okay, great. Anyhow, I would just leave you with, go ask somebody for a coffee. It doesn't need to be formal. Just say, hey, I really admire how you do this. And can I just pick your brain about it for a sec? And then likewise, when people are doing that to you, if you can, you probably should.
I love it. It's spot on. There are a ton of actionable takeaways. It's hard to boil these down to just 3. And I already have a bunch of questions popping up from the audience. So let me just kind of put a little bow around this and then get over to the questions as quickly as we can. So, there's always opportunities to find a mentor. Think outside of the box. Forget that old notion of it has to be so formal. And I just love this concept of build out a board. Don't just stop at one mentor. Have many. And Vanessa, I think what did you say? The one was your empathy department. You could have another one be your your tough love department. They can fill different roles and think about it from a diversification perspective from that end. And it doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be weird. I think that's a big thing. You don't have to hand someone a rose and say, will you be my mentor? It does not have to be anything formal like that. It can, in fact, I think that everyone on the panel here would agree that the best of these relationships just happen organically. It doesn't have to be that uber formal type of a thing. But speaking of diversification, there have been quite a few comments that have come up. Amanda, one of them was specifically asking of you, but I'd love to hear from all three of them. So it says, talking about Amanda's point about shared struggles. As a manager from a minority background, it can be very challenging to find a mentor who shares this aspect of my lived experience. How does the panel look for managers that may have overcome similar challenges to myself? Amanda, I'd love to hear from you if you're open. Thanks.
The topic dear to my heart. Vanessa just mentioned that we are a panel of women here, right? And if you think about it, in pre-sales, this would be very hard to happen 5 or 10 years ago, right? I was lucky to find somebody within my organization that is a woman and a leader and a person that I identify with, that I can refer to. But I appreciate that that's not that easy. So the whole thing about thinking out of the box and looking outside of your organization can definitely help, right? So look inside your community, or if you're part of a community that, where you see the same underrepresented group as you, or look for initiatives where you can, look for people that are also in that same group and that can get together to help each other. In the PreSales Collective, if you're a woman, we have the WISE group that can be very helpful. And there is a DEI group as well. So these are good places to try just to connect with people and try to build that relationship with someone from scratch. And I think that in the other hand, it's also important as we become mentors that we put ourselves out there available to mentor people that are part of the same group as us, right? So as women, that we are available to other women to mentor them and to help them out. And if you're part of any other minority, just put yourself out there. Once you're ready, you feel you're ready to be a mentor to someone. So,
yeah, James, I wish I could just, I don't want to take away from the next session, but I'm having a hard time going through all these questions. They're so good. I want to keep this going. Heather, I'm hoping we can just grab one more question. This one's a great one. How do you make time? And this is every solution engineer in this panel, in this room, if you will. These are all great things, but we all are already working way more than 8 hours a day, way more than 40 hours a week. What do you suggest to try to figure out how to take on these mentorship roles in addition to our regular day-to-day and external responsibilities that we have as well? I want to know all the details.
Such an important question. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Everybody has a million things on their to-do list and things going on at work, outside of work, and whatnot. And I think, the best advice I can say is just prioritize it, because it's going to do you a lot of favors in the long run. So, make sure it's at the top of your list and set aside time, right? Maybe on a weekly basis, you have, time set aside to connect, even just for 15 minutes with somebody who is a mentor who you are currently mentoring. Maybe it's a monthly cadence, but I would recommend just really prioritizing it and set up that regular cadence so that you can, make a point to connect with these individuals. And, Amanda already mentioned it. We're all here, part of this conference that the PreSales Collective has launched. So join the PreSales Collective, start connecting with people who you may not already know. And LinkedIn's a great place for that as well. So I would just recommend, again, prioritizing it, setting actual time in your calendar aside for it and sticking to that. That's
really good advice, Heather. I honestly wouldn't have thought to do that. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And it's hard to believe that I think that was the fastest 30 minutes of the day. cannot thank the three of you enough. We could definitely keep this conversation going. There are a bunch of questions we were not able to get to. I hope that you'll be open to answering some more questions over the next couple of days in Slack for us in the channel that we have going on. But thank you. And James, I'm seeing there's a great question. It might have already been posted in Slack. I'm having a hard time keeping up with everything. Somebody asked in the Q&A, what percentage of organizations have a DE&I team at their organization? That'd be a cool poll to put in Slack and get some feedback on that too.
Absolutely. Well, one, thanks for an amazing session. This was fantastic. Really very actionable and insightful. What I will do is I'll take that question and I'll post it in the Slack, because we're going to break for a 15-minute break at this point. And so I'll get that question in there. Feel free to answer before we get back in about 15 minutes.